things you were having to consider coming back into the paddock and ultimately doing a job that you'd done for a long time, but in another way, it was very fresh and a completely new world to you? So yeah, why don't you just take us through that sort of, you've had the stroke, you're recovering, you're writing the book, but then suddenly it's, you've got to get back to work.
And I was very aware from the beginning that I wanted to get back. And I didn't rest on my laurels, even for one day, because I was like, right, in order to get myself back into the paddock and back, I don't know, at the top of my game, I suppose, I had to push. And I had a lot of support to make that happen, or to enable me to have such a good recovery. So obviously family and friends, but I had people coming to the house on a daily basis. So physio, occupational therapist, a nurse came and checked on me every couple of weeks. All sorts of people fed in to that recovery. And obviously my speech and language therapist was key, because they were able to help me get and find my voice, and find my breathing pattern again. And it just, I think with the extra adrenaline of trying to recover and being on air, yeah, I have a lot to deal with. But the occupational therapist sat down with my bosses at IMG, who have the contract for F1. And they went through how best I could try and return. And that was, you know, taking into consideration things like noise. We didn't know how that would be with my ears and the processing. So we had to think about that. We had to think about food and drink, because most of the time when I go to the paddock, I don't really eat. I just bust it throughout the day and maybe grab something at some point, but there's nowhere that is your home. A lot of the time you're just out in the paddock and pit lane. So it's thinking about things like that, the fundamentals. And unfortunately, I suffer from fatigue. So it was thinking about, could I nap? Could I take a break in the day and actually go somewhere and just switch my brain off to kind of recharge my battery so I could come back in for a second session? And that's a massive consideration. I don't think people really want someone in their workplace that needs a nap. It's really hard. And I have to be kind of honest about that there is a moment that I just, now maybe it's not just a nap, it's just having 10 minutes away from the action to just rest and recharge. But I think when you've had or suffered from a brain injury, there is a lot to think about when it comes to stimulation, energy levels, all of those things that you have to, I don't know, you took for granted before. So yeah, it has been interesting, and some of the teams have been amazing. F1 themselves have gone out of their way. Mercedes have really helped, McLaren, and they've given me a space where I can just go and rest if I need to. So I always feel like I'm a massive imposition and that I'm kind of letting the side down. But I also understand that it's important for me, you know, to get back as much as I can and try and integrate myself, even though I'm not at 100% yet.
I mean, we talk about return to work, but you're absolutely right. We don't have that, you know, going in back into the office. Yeah, offices can be busy, etc., but it's not an F1 paddock or pit lane. It's just not. Also,
those health and safety concerns, which you can understand, totally understandable, that what would happen if they let me loose in a pit lane? Anything could have happened. So I went in there with my colleague, Rosanna Tennant. We walked the pit lane together. We basically both did my old job. And I was so scared, to be honest, because it was make or break. That moment of walking into the pit lane, if I couldn't do that, if it was too much stimulation, then that was in essence my career over. That was a big moment. And I walked in there. So you've got headphones on, you've got a backpack on to be able to send the signals back to base. You're hearing the producer in your ear. You're hearing the commentators in your ear. You're hearing the noise of the pit lane, the fans, all that atmosphere. And then you've got the cars. It's like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And I honestly thought my head's going to explode. I just don't know how this is going to work. And we go on air 5 minutes ahead of the actual FP1 session starting, whatever the session is. And I was so nervous. Rosanna got us on air. And then I stood there and I suddenly thought, hang on a minute. A, my head's not exploded, winning. But equally, it just worked. I knew what I was doing. It must be so ingrained in me that it was like a switch had just gone off and I was like, oh, I'm back. And it was Zandvoort, and standing on the grid ahead of the race with 100,000 fans packed into the grandstand, all flying their flags and dressed in orange, and Max
again, quite an intense race to be the first one back.
And again, I just was able to be on the grid, walk through all the cars, and it was like I was picking up where I left off. And yeah, that weekend I was like, thank goodness. But it's a lot to process.